What's going on, everybody? This is Lady Luck here again. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Oh man, you guys see the title? So, Candace Owens has finally filed her motion to dismiss with the courts regarding the lawsuit from Emmanuel and Brigitte Macron. And we're going to go over that information today. So, before we get started, make sure you guys hit that like button and subscribe to the Lady Luck Club. And I have some exclusive documents you guys are going to want to see. Now, it might not be exclusive now because, I got it off the internet. But either way, I want to go over this. This is going to be an overview of the status of uh, Candace Owens' case and her defense that she's presented to the courts in the motion to dismiss. What I was able to obtain was the brief to support the motion, but for some reason, not the motion itself. So make sure you guys hit the like button and subscribe and consider becoming a member, where you can find exclusive lawsuit complaints and filings and documents and things that I get from my research and reporting on the members only channel. And I have more, of course, fantastic content to come that will be exclusive to the members. So thank you guys so much for the support. Let's get to this. Oh man. And I know it's a whole lot going on, but I had to give this update because this is something that she's still having to juggle, along with now, the loss of her friend Charlie Kirk. So I want to go over the actual court docket activity first. And this is with the Court Connect website that we're looking at here. So I've gone over the docket activity in a couple other videos previously, but just to, scroll to the top, you guys can see the case ID number. N as in Nancy, 25, C as in cat, -07-194. And then, of course, you have Emmanuel Macron versus Candace Owens et al. For defamation case. You have the attorneys, the judges listed here. This case was transferred from Judge Calvin Scott to Judge Sheldon Rennie. So far, Judge Sheldon Rennie is still the judge assigned to the case. And if, there's another judge to come in, then you will see that judge listed. And then what I want to do is get down to the most recent activity here. So, of course, you guys see the date here of September 12th. I've gone over the letter for judicial review, and then, of course, the court just acknowledging the letter itself as so noted. But let's get here to the last two entries that you see. Actually, it's three. So let's get to the last three entries dated for September 12th, 2025 here. And this is an affidavit filed date docketed September 14, 2025, transmittal affidavit of Catherine L. Mowry, Esquire, in support of defendant's opening brief in support of its motion to dismiss. You guys see here with a certificate of service, and then they have some exhibits. Exhibit 1 to the transmittal affidavit of Catherine L. Mowry in support of defendant's opening brief, and Exhibit 2 is a transmittal affidavit of Catherine L. Mowry in support of defendant's opening brief as well. That was accepted. And then if you go to the next activities cited here, then you'll see the motion to dismiss itself that was filed, docketed September 14, 2025. Defendant's motion to dismiss with a certificate of service notice of motion to the defendant's motion to dismiss to be heard at the convenience of the court. So anytime you file a motion in a case, it triggers a hearing. And oftentimes, if there's multiple motions, what the judge will do is set some time aside on the calendar to hear the motions. And then, of course, both sides have the opportunity to present their legal arguments, any exhibits to accompany that, and as well as, if they need to give, statements to the court, those hearings are the opportunity for them to do that. So, of course, with this motion to dismiss, that is going to be a hearing within itself. This is not the trial hearing. It's going to be a hearing on the motion to dismiss specifically. All right. And then, of course, when you're filing certain documents according to civil procedure and court rules, you have to have, uh, certain attachments with it. So, with a motion to dismiss, you typically have a cover, you have then the motion itself, and then you have the brief in support of that motion, plus the certificate of service and a proposed order. So, in the event, let's say the judge decides to grant the motion to dismiss, then the judge already has a proposed order. And if there needs to be any edits or changes made, the attorney that is being granted the motion, the moving party, can then edit that proposed order as they need to. So, the proposed order to the defendant's motion to dismiss was accepted. And then, of course, you see the last activity here, opening brief filed, date docketed September 14, 2025. Defendant's opening brief in support of their motion to dismiss with a certificate of service of compliance with typeface requirement and type volume. And mind you, they had to get a special request submitted to have the word limit increased regarding the brief to support the motion. Okay. So there are court rules that limit, the number of words and pages in certain pleadings, because judges don't like to sit and read that stuff all day. They don't have all day, right, to just read one, pleading or filing. So it needs to be where, you know, at least the senior staff attorney for the judge is able to read through the information and to kind of, give the judge an update on, what the motion with the pleading is about. And if the judge needs to read through it, they will. But that's, for the sake of brevity. So let's get to the next bit of news that I wanted to share with you all. This is from legalnewsfeed.com. And this post was done, 4 hours ago. So it's Candace Owens challenges Delaware jurisdiction in Macron defamation case, raising libel tourism concerns. So, of course, Candace Owens, they give some background on her being a conservative influencer, recently challenged the jurisdiction of a Delaware court in the defamation lawsuit initiated by the French first couple, Emmanuel and Brigitte Macron. Owens, who broadcasts her own podcast from Nashville, argued that Delaware has no jurisdiction because neither she, the Macrons, nor any key evidence or witness have connections to the state. So this is the bulk of what her motion to dismiss is based on. It's based on what's called libel tourism. And that is what they're presenting to the judge in this motion to dismiss, to say, here's why, this court does not have jurisdiction over the matter. We don't live here. The Macrons don't live here. But what Candace and her attorney seems to forget is that Candace has an LLC that is licensed in the state of Delaware. So that is why the Macron's attorney filed this lawsuit with the Delaware court. There is an LLC registered in the state of Delaware. So jurisdictional challenges in defamation cases are not uncommon. According to the legal principles governing jurisdiction, a court must have a legitimate connection to the parties involved or the contentious subject matter. Owens contends this connection is clearly absent in Delaware's bid to preside over the litigation against her. She claims that the state's involvement is tenuous at best, underscoring the importance of venue appropriateness in defamation claims. The concept of libel tourism has gained attention in recent years, particularly with the global reach of online publications. Historically, plaintiffs have sought out locations with plaintiff-friendly libel laws when seeking redress. So basically, you're saying that if a plaintiff, like the Macrons, is filing a lawsuit, they're going to pick the state where the libel laws aren't so restrictive. So, and then, of course, the belief is that it will be easier for you to win your case. But like I said, there is an LLC that is registered to Candace Owens in that state. So that is the only reason why they filed the lawsuit in the state of Delaware, because otherwise I don't think that they would have filed it there. They would have filed it in Nashville, Tennessee, in the state of Tennessee, where she actually resides. So this practice is frowned upon by critics who argue for venue reform that reflects the realities of digital communication and its borderless nature. Some jurisdictions have enacted laws to deter this practice by tightening the rules around jurisdiction in defamation cases, which can otherwise chill free speech and burden defendants with defending themselves far from home. Although Owens' challenge is a preliminary step, its outcome could influence future litigation involving prominent figures and cross-border defamation claims. There is a case law of another international leader filing a lawsuit against, a defendant in another country. So it's not like it's never been done, but it's just not common. And of course, the idea of a world leader in a different country filing a lawsuit against, an influencer, someone that just has a YouTube channel, something to that extent, it's not something that's common either. But they do have the right to do it. Whether people agree with it or not is, up to the courts to determine whether or not there's any validity or any standing with that. And that's what the hearing is going to be about. Both attorneys for Candace and for the Macrones will be able to come in and present argument, for the case. I'm sure the Macrones are more along the lines of, we don't want this to be dismissed because how do we know this is not going to stop? And of course, Candace's viewpoint is this entire state of Delaware has no jurisdiction. I don't live here. They don't live here. Why are we here? Your LLC is registered there. So, and then I have this information here, and I want to thank you all for tuning in. Make sure you guys are hitting the like button. And I just wanted to present some information here. This is the libel tourism. Happens when plaintiffs in a libel case take advantage of the differences in defamation laws between foreign countries. So I'm not sure of the libel laws in France, right? But they wouldn't have a reason to file it in France, seeing that one, it might present a huge conflict that they're the president and first lady of France. And two, Candace has no connection to France at all. She doesn't have a residence there or business registered there or anything. And as opposed to them selecting the state where her home residence is, which would be Tennessee, they selected the state where one of her LLCs is registered in, which is Delaware. So just looking at the situation surface level, it seems like they kind of had to come to some sort of median or middle ground here when they decided, where to file the lawsuit. And I don't think that they would have filed it in her state. Then I think the argument would have been, well, I live here and they don't live here at all. So, but it's no different than what she's decrying about Delaware. But Candace has had a previous lawsuit that was filed in Delaware. And the courts heard that as well. And Judge Rennie presided over that case. And that was with I think it was a book company of some sort where, she sued them and it was dismissed due to lack of being able to state a claim. So this isn't her first lawsuit that has been challenged in a Delaware court where she was a party to the case. Whether she's the plaintiff or the defendant, this is not Candace Owens' first time having a lawsuit complaint in any matter heard in the state of Delaware. So just like the previous case that was dismissed due to her failure to state a claim where she was the plaintiff in that matter, this is just a matter where she's the defendant. But it doesn't make a difference if the lawsuit complaints are being filed in the state where her LLC is registered. So I'm not sure how that's going to turn out for her taking this approach, but I just wanted you all to understand, the libel tourism aspect. You guys can, always check this out. This is on findlaw.com. But, my go-to is the Cornell Law EDU website where I can, look up quick legal definitions and information on that. And last but not least, The dead at the top of it all. This is the defendant's opening brief in support of their motion to dismiss. This is the court filing, you guys. Now, I don't know why I can't find the motion to dismiss itself. This is just the brief supporting it. And it's 43 pages long. All right. So I'm not going to read the entire brief, but this just kind of gives you, an idea of some of the legal arguments that her attorney is making in this in the brief to support their motion. And typically the motion to dismiss itself is just straightforward. It's just you're asking, giving quick background of the case, asking the judge to dismiss the motion on the grounds of libel tourism, something to that extent. And then the brief is where they go into the legal arguments, present case law, civil procedure rule, court rules. That's where you go into detail in this brief. So as you guys can see here, case number in as a Nancy 25 C as in cat -07-194 SKR. And of course, you have the plaintiffs and defendants listed, the attorneys. And the format here has to be specific to court rules as well. Certain pleadings and documents have to be formatted a certain way. And the motion to dismiss is one of those pleadings that has to be formatted based on the court rule itself for civil procedure. So you have this table of contents, and it just kind of breaks down, the sections of the actual brief itself. And judges don't like to read all this stuff. I'm gonna tell you all right now. Judges do not want to have to read all this information. They typically will say, okay, yeah, give me a summary on this. So when you go to court, I mean, the legal argument is going to be like, kind of summarizing what they've already outlined in their brief itself. Then you have a table of authorities. This is case law. These are all cases, that they're able to reference that is related to their case. You can't cite a case that is irrelevant to the matter at hand. So it has to flow with your case. And then what it does, it just kind of gives the court some idea how in similar situations, here's the previous rulings on matters that's related to this. And it helps to ensure that the interpretation of the law is consistent. Now, the judge could easily say, okay, well, now I'll deny the motion to dismiss because we have jurisdiction, but here are the reasons why. So as long as it does not completely violate the law, judges have a lot of discretion. But they also get, this information that helps to, define the legal arguments as well here. So I'm going to just scroll down. Y'all, this is like, 3-4 pages of cases. A lot of cases. State statutes and rules. So here's where you see, state statutes and court rules. So you see Superior Court Civil Rule here on the page numbers that's listed. And then other authorities, restatement second of torts. And then they go into the actual intro itself. So, of course, Candace Owens, LLC, Georgetown, Inc., collectively defendants by and through counsel hereby move to dismiss the claims brought against them in the complaint pursuant to Superior Court Civil Rules 12, B as in boy 2, and then 3, 5, and 6 of the same. And then they give the introduction. I think we went over the lawsuit itself and the filing. I also have it uploaded in my members only in a separate video where you guys can check out the entire 219 page filing and no commentary in it. And you can pause it and read it until your heart's desire. But it's basically disputing some of the, allegations in the actual lawsuit itself. And then, of course, establishing to the court the premise for the motion to dismiss based on the jurisdiction matter. So it has here, they, to summarize this, they filed the baseless defamation lawsuit as the defendant is alleging against an independent American journalist who broadcast daily news and culture show from her basement in Nashville, Tennessee. They are upset. This is so weird. The Macrones are upset that defendant Candace Owens produced an opinion-based series discussing the Macron's relationship, their families' histories, and their rise to fame, power, and influence. This court, however, along with all other state and federal courts in the U.S., including the Supreme Court, has protected journalists' First Amendment rights to produce such content since our nation's founding. Okay, so the problem is not that she had her opinion. The problem is that her opinion was being purported as a matter of a fact. There's the difference. And Candace staked her whole reputation on it. She said, I will stake my career on this. I will stake my reputation on this. You were born a man, you will die a man. She didn't mince words with it. So when you hear her use that language, and she actually said, these are facts. This is the truth. It's no longer, in the realm of her opinion, or even a theory or belief or something. She purported it to be a fact and called it a fact. And she said it in her videos, several videos. And then, of course, she also said that she would not be seeking for a dismissal when she was on Tucker Carlson. So, I would rather, hear Candace say, hey, guys, listen, I know that I want to fight this, and we are going to fight it because I stand by my, journalism, my reporting, or what have you. But it's standard to file a motion to dismiss. It doesn't mean that someone's giving up, but it's typically what you see in civil procedures. So it's not uncommon for the defendant to automatically want to seek a dismissal and to try to discredit, any merit to the case. So to say that you're not going to seek a dismissal was, her speaking out of terms. And honestly, she should have consulted with an attorney, all 5 of them, because she has like 3 or 4 attorneys. She should have consulted with all of her attorneys before going on an interview with Tucker Carlson. And I'm sure she's learned now to be careful in how she phrase and word things, because if it's not, based on documentation or evidence, don't purport your opinion to be a fact. That's very dangerous. That's how you cross into, defamation bill, USA. You don't want to go there. You want to keep it your opinion if it's an opinion. If it's a matter of a fact, it should be information or some documentation to support it that the average reasonable person can research and look up for themselves as well. So they give some background on, of course, the president, Emmanuel Macron. The reason is clear. I'm just kind of skimming over this stuff. The reason is clear. This matter is not a legitimate legal action, but rather a transparent ruse orchestrated by plaintiff's high-priced public relations firm. Oh, God. Had the Macrons actually suffered reputational harm from Mrs. Owens' opinion piece, and were they serious about clearing their names or protecting their reputations, they would have filed suit in France within the applicable limitations period. Not necessarily. Because even though it might be their home, it's not hers. She has no ties to it. And it's not, like I said, there is precedence to show, another international figure filing a lawsuit against, what was another independent journalist. So in that case, the petitioner won. So you can't really say that they don't have the right to file it over in the US. But what they did do, it was smart. They chose, okay, let's not go to her home state. Let's go to Delaware, where her Georgetown LLC is registered. And there's no denying that. That's a matter of a fact. She has a business registered in the state of Delaware. So if that's where they're doing business and she's operating, her podcast under this Georgetown Inc. LLC company, then that would help to establish that jurisdiction. And if you go back to the actual original lawsuit that was filed, the Macron's attorney go into great detail about the jurisdiction itself, because I'm sure they foresaw this happening. So, let's see here. I think it's, a bit premature to say that their reputations would not injured, because you can't say what type of damage they've suffered, the distress, the emotional distress that was inflicted on either one of them. Brigitte Macron is what, over 70? She has grandchildren, she has children. Candace has stated flat out, not even implied, she has literally stated that Brigitte Macron did not give birth and those are not her children. I don't know how that's not, inflicting emotional distress to the point where, it could cause some harm and injure them in that aspect. The last thing you will want to do, especially as a mother, is to try to take away someone else's motherhood. And I know I've spoken on that in grave detail in previous videos that I've done covering, these case updates regarding this lawsuit. And I've said the same thing about Candace. You don't sit here and attack someone's motherhood and say that she did not give birth 3 times. So how does that not present any harm or danger? Your opinion and your theory on things, and I'm gonna tell you all right now, Lady Luck Club, I don't operate on theories. I operate on facts. Your opinion is your opinion, but you're purporting your opinion to be a fact, and then you're trying to discredit her motherhood. That's, come on now. We have to go through to give birth and bring life into this world. My stomach still kind of, wiggles at the thought of the C-sections I had to go through to give birth. Like, you can't take that away from her. So surely that's going to cause some reputational harm and emotional distress. Plus, not just on her, but her children and her grandchildren. They have to see these videos. They have to, the ones that are old enough to understand, they'll be looking at this like, I can't believe she said this is not our grandmother. Like, it's not just inflicting, the harm and danger on Brigitte Macron. It's her family as well, as a whole. So, I just, I don't think that's, seeing that she said some crazy things to say that they didn't experience any harm is just, it's reckless. Come on now. They're alleging that, the Macrons are trying to stifle her freedom of speech. And I mean, honestly, they have sent over information to Candace, basically trying to get her, to see it. Listen, what you're saying is not true. They tried to correct the error or the mistakes that she was making, and she didn't accept any of it. What she really wanted was an interview, and they did not have to give her that. And then when she asked for, when she made the statement about the first lady's blood, I was done. I was like, oh no, you're not getting that, Candace. That judge will not order Brigitte Macron to give up DNA. And that's what you would need to prove someone's gender. Either that or some, medical documents, which would violate their medical privacy. So, I mean, she knows that she was only limited to what she could get as concrete evidence. And it's, why continue to dig that hole? That's the, the ultimate question to be asked here. Why continue to dig that hole? So, this is what it means to have your pride come before your fall. It was not worth it to go that far, to discredit her motherhood, and then, to deny and reject all evidence they tried to, send over to Candace so that she could correct, the facts. And what she did not accept, the court may accept as, evidence. So, the court, they're saying here, thus the court has no basis for exercising general jurisdiction over her. The Macron's attempt to establish personal jurisdiction over Mrs. Owens under 6 Del C Statute 18-109 also fails. Also, as a threshold matter, the Macrons failed to serve her under Section 18-109. So there was an issue that Candace mentioned about receiving the service here, where it went to an address that she stated is for return of merchandise. So she didn't even know that she was served until they came and knocked on her door. But that's based on the address she has on file with the court. Like I said, this is not the first lawsuit that Candace has either, been the plaintiff or defendant that was, heard in the state of Delaware. This is the second one I've come across. So it's not her first time dealing with Delaware courts. So if you don't correct your address with the court, then they're sending the documents to the address on file with the court. They're not going to hunt you down to change your address. You got to make sure that's updated yourself, Candace. So they saying here, instead of suing in their home country where their alleged harm was occurred, or in Tennessee, where the alleged harm, was done on electronic platform, electronic communications, where it's kind of hard to say that it happened in a specific location. She made videos and posts and all these things over the internet. So to say that it occurred in one spot or one location is not necessarily true. They could have been in the US where they were inflicted some injury. It's just hard to pinpoint that. You would have to go based on the date and time stamps of all the communication that occurred. But her 8-part series, goes back to last year. So for the attorney to say it all occurred in their home state, no, it could have occurred while they were here too. Whatever backlash they caught, I'm sure they caught some of it here in the US when they came. So it's hard to kind of limit that when it's based on electronic communications. And you're talking about, something that's borderless when it comes to jurisdiction matters. All right. So, and then they're saying, or in Tennessee, where they could have filed it, where she lives, where the alleged defamatory statements were published. The McCrone sued in Delaware, which has no connection to the McCrones, no connection to Mrs. Owens, which Georgetown LLC does, and no connection to the claims alleged. The McCrone's ill-conceived gambit, however, falls short. Delaware's borrowing statute explicitly prohibits this sort of forum shopping, and because it requires this court to apply France's 3-month statute of limitations, the complaint must be dismissed in its entirety. So here's where they, try to imply the libel tourism aspect here. And like I said, I'm not going to read the full document, but I am going to scroll for you guys to be able to see it. If you would like for me to record this in a separate video and post it up, you can. I found this online, and I can't even find the actual motion itself. But, the meat and potatoes is in this brief supporting the motion. And this is basically her response to the lawsuit. So it's not going to be a separate response. This is the response. And that's through this motion to dismiss that she said she was not going to file. So, I don't get it. But either way, they keep saying that she records her podcast from her basement. I mean, just say her Nashville home. You keep saying the basement. I don't understand that. Why keep saying the basement? Make her sound like a pauper. Candace is not new to this. Girls, worth $220 million. Okay, so then they have a section where statement of questions involved, and this is posed to the court. You got to remember, they're presenting their legal argument in this document. So the way this is formatted and phrased is how it would be heard if they were verbally expressing this in court. And when they do have the hearing, hopefully it'll just be kind of like an overview, a summary of what's in the brief. And then the court, of course, can always read this, and get down to the nitty-gritty of it all. But I don't expect them to have hours-long hearings on this one motion when everything was pretty much done in this filing. They have court rules cited here. Dismissal is appropriate when it appears with reasonable certainty that under any set of facts that could be proven to support the claims asserted, the plaintiff would not be entitled to relief. And then they have Clinton v. Enterprise Rent-A-Car, and they have the case information cited here. So this is where they're citing case law that was listed in the table of authorities that we saw previously. And like I said, I think, if Candace would have just said, okay, it is what it is. They sent me the pictures. They sent me the birth announcement. It's still my opinion, but I'll accept the documentation. And moving on. Talking about doing a season 2. I mean, no. It just, And it makes it harder for the Macrons to think about wanting to entertain or agree to a stipulation or stipulate to a motion to dismiss. Because is she going to stop saying these things and stop doing it where she's purporting it as a fact? That's the question. If the behavior doesn't cease, then we'll be back at this same point again, 3-4 months down the line, especially if she thinks about doing a part two. So, of course, they're, arguing the court lacks personal jurisdiction over Candace herself. And then, like I said, I'm just kind of going over the major points here being made. The court lacks general jurisdiction over Mrs. Owens. And you guys can see the argument here, along with case law and court rules cited. They even cited a U.S. Supreme Court decision. In Daimler, a defendant is not subject to general jurisdiction wherever it engages in a substantial, continuous, and systemic course of business, unless it is essentially at home in the forum state. So they're saying because she works in her home basement in Nashville, Tennessee, then the general jurisdiction cannot apply. Now, if she had a home in Delaware and her business was mainly conducted in her home in Delaware, then that would cover the general jurisdiction. But she doesn't reside in the state of Delaware, and she's not doing her podcast in the state of Delaware. But if she's doing it under Candace Owens, and let's say Georgetown is the parent company or parent LLC over Candace Owens LLC, the petition to the plaintiff, their attorney is going to argue that. So, scrolling down here, I'm just going to get down to the bottom because I just want to read the summary. Like I said, you guys can take time to read this. It's 43 pages, and I think it's a lot that, is sort of repetitive, but, they're trying to really stick and land the point here. They have section 18-109 does not apply here. Then they speak about the service, but yet they mailed the information to the address that was on file with the court. They didn't try to figure out where she lived or anything like that. My question would be, why didn't you just accept the documents that they sent or the exhibits, the photos? Everything can't be fake. And that would be, if I had to sit down and give some pearls of wisdom to Candace, everything can't be a conspiracy. Because if you keep digging that hole into conspiratorial land, you'll never come out of that. And then at some point, the lines between reality and what's factually based and conspiracy, it blurs. And so, you're questioning everything that could be factually based. You question everything in reality. Is the sky really blue? It might be purple. Everything comes into question. And at what point do you accept something to be a fact if you're so deep into conspiracy? You have to be careful when you're purporting yourself to be a journalist and you're talking about free speech and freedom of the press. There has to be some level of integrity and some level of facts and evidence in our reporting. That's why I don't do conspiracy theories. I just can't do it. Yeah, God bless those who do, but I can't do it. So, thank you all so much for tuning in. After this, I'm going to go over a video. I just found it to be funny. But she's pretty much already showing her hand here. What she gonna say when she go to court. But we'll get to that after this here. And if you guys, like I said, want me to just do a separate video and upload this document, I know I'm scrolling kind of fast, but you can always slow down the speed or playback, and you can also pause if you want to read, or I can do a separate video and just upload this document. But I will have the link to where I found it at in the description of this video, so you guys can read it for yourselves. So let's go down to this the resolution that they're seeking from the court basically is, please dismiss this case. That's it. That's what we want at this point. And then, of course, they respond to these counts. I mean, they had what? 20 plus counts? Ugh, my goodness. That was a long. I tell you, it was it's like a novel. Y'all judges don't like reading all that stuff. They really don't. They're like, we went to law school. We're not doing it again. They want it to be simple and easy, for the sake of brevity. The judge is like, I got other cases. I can't just sit here and read this book all day. So let's get to the conclusion. Hold on, let me go up. I just read this here. Let's see. At bottom, this is a defamation action that has no legitimate connection to this forum, and litigating in Delaware presents an overwhelming hardship to defendants that are worth $220 million. Therefore, defendants respectfully request that the court dismiss this action under the forum non-convenience doctrine. And then, of course, conclusion. For the foregoing reasons, this case should be dismissed in its entirety. So, there you go. You have the attorney's information, the certificate of service. They did a file and serve express. And of course, you have to send copies to all parties involved. And that's the end of that. So let's get to this video. I just found it to be absolutely hilarious. Candace. She goes into, and this is the episode she did. Let me see. This is the episode she did 12 days ago. All right. So this is from her channel. I'm just going to play this segment because I just thought it was funny for her to compare herself to Cardi B.
Cardi B, the rapper, you may have seen this clip going around. It is hilarious. We don't even actually need the appropriate context. Okay. Cardi B, the rapper, had to testify recently in a court case that was brought against her. And I'm listening to what she is saying as she is being questioned about certain things. And I realized that this could actually be me answering questions about how I got involved in the Brigitte McCrode case. Let's roll the clip.
She wrote.
I don't think I was like on a high level of angry. I was more on a high level of concern. Very concerned.
Me too.
And why were you concerned?
Oh my God.
Because I'm pregnant and this girl's about to beat my ass. Hello?
Hello.
Hello, I'm here. You said she's bigger than you? Is that correct?
Absolutely.
How do you know that?
I mean, look.
I agree with you. What is your basis? Are you saying she's physically bigger? She's taller?
I mean, you have her medical records,
I don't
right?
have anything. I want to ask you the question.
Oh no.
I mean, I was 130 pounds at that time.
So she's overweight, right? In your opinion.
Objection, relative.
She's a little.
You don't need to answer me.
Okay.
Look, when they ask me how I got involved, I'm going to be like, look, I was pregnant. I would say a little bit concerned about this story of a 14-year-old and a 40-year-old teacher. And then when they say, how do you know she's a man? I'm going to be like,
stop it.
Pause.
Candace. No, ma'am. You will not blame all of this on an unborn child because you were pregnant. No, ma'am. That is not going to fly. Cardi be talking about y'all got her medical records. Why would they need that lady medical records? It's a HIPAA violation. You ain't gonna sit here and talk about her medical records in court, girl. What are you talking about?
Eyes here. Obviously, something's going on.
Candace,
anyways, it's going to be great. It's going to be fantastic. Welcome.
Yeah, she filed the motion to dismiss, and that was great and fantastic. All right. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I had to end it on this funny note because this is hilarious. Candace, you tried, girl. You tried. Nice try, though. But either way, you guys hit the like button and make sure you check the description for the links for all of the resources in today's video. Also, make sure you subscribe to the Lady Luck Club, trying to hit 30,000 subs by the end of September. 30,000 supporters. by the end of September 30th to be exact. So make sure you guys are subscribing and share the video. Also check the video description for the Dr. Squatch products. We are partnered with the Dr. Squatch. Please go buy some soap, some deodorant, some toiletries for the young men in your lives so they can feel good, smell good, and be fresh and clean. Make sure you throw it in your child's gym bag when they go out and play sports since school is in session, and they can shower with Dr. Squatch soap bars. They smell good, and my sons enjoy them. So make sure you check that out. I do receive a commission. It goes back to the channel to support the channel and the content coming out of the Lady Luck Club. Thank you all so much for tuning in, and until the next one, Lady Luck Club out.